Hello there and welcome back to another review. Following on from my previous review of Shaolin Kung Fu, I thought we'd delve a bit more into the Joseph Kyo collection here today and have another look at one of the movies that's found in this box set. We're going to be having a look at Shaolin Kids today. Made in 1977, a lot of people turn their noses up at the Taiwan-based martial arts films. To some, unless they originate from Hong Kong, a lot of people are very sort of almost snobby in a way. Because when something's sort of Taiwan based, they think it's not. They don't really know. Some people out there, some aficionados or whatever you want to call them, like I say, sort of movie snobs, if you will, they don't consider sometimes them true kung fu movies or martial arts films. But there is a lot of fun to be had in these movies. Obviously, with the budget, the constraints, and what was allowed, these productions were never ever going to compete with something, say, that Hong Kong would produce and what was coming out from Hong Kong at the time. But I think to dismiss the whole Taiwan based kung fu movies is very unfair, because there was some great output that did happen. They were never going to compete with something like, say, like sort of Shaw Brothers were doing, but Joseph Kyo was never one lacking in confidence, and he gave it a damn good try. This is why this box set I can't, sort of praise enough, because he was one of these people not to be intimidated. Was Joseph Kyo. He with many of his productions, he did have confidence. He was one of these filmmakers, kung fu filmmakers, that was like, I'm not gonna make it in Taiwan. I'm gonna make it in Taiwan. But he had his body of work is not extensively large, but it's large enough that he did make a bit of quite a dent, not a massive dent, but he made a dent nonetheless in the kung fu industry. Again, like Shaolin Kung Fu, there is very little, yet again, or no mention of the Shaolin Temple in this movie either, which is interesting, because I think sometimes let's just whack Shaolin in the title. That'll draw people in. But I'd say there's no mention that here. Ironically, the element of combat in the film is largely down to swords and spears, much like a King Hu film, ironically enough. And speaking of that, in this movie, our lead here, played by Shang-Kuan, Ling-Feng, was one of Taiwan's biggest stars and made her debut in King Hu's Dragon Inn. The film could be argued was outdated a bit even then, as people had moved away from sort of the swords and were focused mainly on sort of the hand-to-hand kung fu battles that were becoming sort of very popular at the time, as I say, made in 1977. So things were sort of ramping up. If you have to remember, a year later we were getting the Drunken Masters, the Snake and the Eagle's Shadow. So the idea was very with the King Hu with the swords and things like that. Audiences have sort of moved away from that. Filmmaking have moved away from that at this point, and it was largely down to the hand-to-hand sort of fisticuffs, if you will, that was drawing in the audiences and getting box office results. You could argue as well that Shaolin Kids, in a way, is almost a bit of a throwback. It's still an enjoyable film, but it's a very simple film. It's a very simple film in the nature and the way it's done. So we'll be getting into that today. So the film basically concerns this evil prime minister, and he is trying to overthrow the government and the emperor to gain control. As I say, very simple stuff. There's nothing that you have to worry too much with the plot here. It just, like I say, it just plays, there's your bad guy, wants to overthrow the government. We have Mr. Liu, is like dean of the people, who hates the prime minister and ends up getting poisoned by this guy pretending to be a doctor. His daughter swears revenge, and in her travels finds the real doctor on the roadside murdered. Hu Wei-yong, the Prime Minister, has two henchmen known as the Light and the Dark Killers, who are sort of unmatched in their skills, and nobody's ever sort of beaten them, and they're, like I say, they're sort of the main sort of henchmen, as you will. So the daughter teams up with others trying to bring this evil guy down, even going to Shaolin Master to ask for help. We meet Wong here. So there is some, I'll tell you that, but there is some Shaolin in this movie, but again, not a lot. There is hinted at. There's probably more, let's just say there's more Shaolin in this movie than there is in Shaolin Kung Fu. So we see Wong here sporting a very nice stuck-on beard, who plans to kidnap the emperor. The whole film revolves around this letter that he has written with his plans on it, right? So this is basically the bolt. That's your MacGuffin here. There's this letter. He's wrote his plans down on this thing. So our good guys are spying on him and ambush him and try to get the letter. The fight sequences here, I think, are a lot more fun and well staged, more so than Shaolin Kung Fu. As like I mentioned, this was done a few years later. So get that in that time, in that 3-year period, obviously develop the skills a lot more, camera techniques, the way the fights are shot, the angles, different things like that. And the fights in this film are definitely a lot more sophisticated and a lot better than what they are in Shaolin Kung Fu. One point, a sword going in the air, spinning and landing in a person's back, which is cool stuff. I believe it was Cliff Locke who was in charge of the choreography in this movie, who very sort of, he's another underrated performer. If you're familiar with there's one of his films that I like, I don't know if any of you have seen it, it's called Kung Fu Genius, starring Cliff Locke. It's really, again, it's sort of the Kung Fu movies that are often forgotten about in the grand scheme of things. But if you have seen Kung Fu Genius or know of any Cliff Locke movies, just let me know in the comments below, because he's like sort of one of these people that everybody sort of forgets about. But I think he done the choreography for this movie. So who is mad and like getting the letter back and kill even people you suspect? Even if like, I mean, he's not messing around. He's like, he wants to find out what's going on. He's like, even if you suspect somebody, kill them, right? He is like livid. He isn't messing around. So the whole, like I say, the whole MacGuffin here is the letter. One of the allies, Lord Zhang, is kidnapped by the evil Prime Minister. General Liu is one of the good guys, discovers this, and our heroine gets ambushed, and people at a local brothel at the inn end up aiding them so they can escape. You can argue that some of the camera work on the fight scenes is a tad up close at some points. I think the camera is a bit too, some points is a bit too in their faces, so to speak. I think it's a bit too tight. Some of the camera angles, it's not, some of the shots are not wide enough when they should be. There is some wonderful lighting when the film is set at night. Kind of certain shots, it very much reminds me actually of, if talking of King Hu, as I mentioned earlier, sort of that sort of come drink with me kind of look, kind of vibe that's going on here. So Polly takes one of our bad guys' uniforms to get in to get Lord Zane back. Obviously everyone here thinks she is a guy, much like Golden Swallow, as I mentioned in Come Drink With Me. The whole idea, like sort of hitting it as an opera, when a girl is dressed up as a man, we obviously all know she's really a girl, but the idea is, you know, the people in the film don't. To them, she just looks like a man. So she gets in. Obviously, everyone here, like I say, thinks she's got much like kind of kung fu movies, and I loved how she gets in. Not one person is like, "Who are they?" You know, they, even if she is disguised as a man or whatever, she gets in, and nobody's like, "Who are you? We've never seen you before." She just walks us in, like just like one of the crew, which is fine. But surely you've got people that are on the payroll. Surely you've got people that you work with. You wouldn't just be a random night work. Suddenly somebody there who is in uniform who you've never ever seen before. So nobody bats an eyelid at this. So General Liu, his son, and Cart Wong all turn up to help Polly get Zhang out. He needs to recover a Taoist priest informs them, but unbeknownst to them, goes on to sell them out to be evil, to the evil Prime Minister. So this guy's sort of helping them, then he sort of sells them out. He's a dirty double crosser. This guy really, you think he's on their side, but he's not. So they get wind the light and dark killers are on their trail, and they sort of go on the run. Who is like, I just want Zhang. Not sure why though. I thought you wanted the letter back. You know what I mean? Like, there's a few little things. There's sometimes isn't a lot of Joseph Kyo films where, well, that contradicts what you mentioned with that. Like at one point he wants the letter back, then he wants Zhang killed, and it's like, well, which is it? What's your priority here? Which, what do you want? I thought you just wanted the letter. What does it matter whether Zhang's dead or not? Do you wanted the letter back? Because that's got your plans on it. So you don't want that getting out. Surely Zhang is not important right now. So they take him to a safe place. General Liu gets killed by them as he helped them escape. Polly and Liu's son are told to go and retrieve the letter that Zhang has hidden. Hu Wei-yong has invited the Emperor to see his special spring to lure him out of an ambush. Our heroes plan to intercept the stagecoach so they can show the Emperor the letter, and are told not to bring weapons as sort of the penalty is death. So they want to inform the Emperor what's going on, because they got this letter. They want to inform the Emperor of what's happened. This is going to happen. They're after you. They want to kill you. What's so funny is if you watch that scene, they say don't bring weapons because the penalty is death. They just bring them anyway. Like there's people just turn up with weapons anyway. They're not too worried about that. So weapons, who cares? Carter ends up getting a spear through his stomach here from the Heaven and Earth killers. So Carter Wong doesn't have a huge sort of role here, not as compared to sort of say something like, I know it wasn't Joseph Kyo, but not like Hapkido or Return of the 18 Bronzemen. Carter Wong's very much just sort of in the sidelines here. I'd say gets a spear through the stomach. At one point, both think they are going. These killers, at one point, they both think they're going to die, but they take this sort of life-saving pill they both carry with them. And when both on their last legs, they both sort of end up fighting over this last one. So, like I say, these killers, they've got this tablet which can just remedy any ailment or anything they're feeling. They just basically both the pair of them just sort of end up fighting over this tablet, which will enable them to recover quite quickly. There's some nice bow staff work in some of the action scenes here. We learn that Liu's son did learn about his father's death earlier, just for some reason. Liu's son, like, his father gets killed. I'll say, if you've never seen this film, what I'm talking about when I'm talking characters' names is probably not making a lot of sense. But if you have seen this film, Liu's father dies, but he doesn't. You don't get a reaction from it at all. He gets killed, and at one point you do realise that he did know about it, because I was watching, I was thinking, does he even know that his father's died? So we do learn that he did know about his father's death earlier. Just for some reason, like I say, we never saw a reaction to it. The Drunken Master theme is played throughout most of the movie, by the way, that classic theme song that we all know from Wong Fei-hung and Once Upon a Time in China, that is used relentlessly in this movie. So they get an audience with the Emperor and about to present the letter, when at the last moment Polly realised that she doesn't have it. So all this time they've had the letter, and they go to like get the Emperor and inform him and show him what's happening, then she doesn't have it. She doesn't have the letter. So she tells him the info, and the Emperor's like, I will go home now, after his scout spots some troops in the distance laying in wait. So one of the Prime Minister's men manages to get the letter back to him, who asks his assistant to burn it, and the Emperor's like, what were all the men about? Because this guy was going to sort of ambush him, because the Emperor has sort of scouts, and the Prime Minister's like, he goes, why did you have all them men waiting him? Like, it's never explained where the letter goes either. Like, she loses it, then the guy gets it back. At this point, it's like, don't even care anymore, So the Emperor's like telling the guy, like, what was all them men about? What were you kind of planning to do? And he was like, well, we were just waiting there in case you needed some added security. And they wasn't. They were going to ambush him and sort of overthrow the Emperor. We find out the assistant, again, didn't burn the letter. And the Emperor sees it. Prime Minister is sentenced to death. The rebels get rewarded for their effort. And that's the end of the movie. So 1 minute she loses the letter. Then they find the letter. Guy goes to burn it. Turns out he doesn't burn it. And then the Emperor sees it. And that's the end. That's the end of the movie. But like I mentioned, don't underestimate. Although it seems like the way I describe it is quite silly, and it is not to be. It's one of these movies where, like I say, Joseph Kyo is very. Where it's a Taiwan-based film, don't overlook them. They're not necessarily as classic. I mean, there are people I know who love the Taiwan sort of Joseph Kyo movies, just for something different. And like I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of snobs out there that think unless it's Hong Kong based, unless it come out of Hong Kong, unless it's sort of a Shaw Brothers or a Golden Harvest production, it doesn't carry much weight. But there's a lot to be enjoyed with these movies. And like I say, with this film, it's got that sort of King Hu. Sort of very hinted at that sort of come drink with me kind of vibe about it. It's just some of the plot discrepancies are a bit sort of, hang on, wait a minute. And this is often happens in a Joseph Kyo. It's not that it doesn't necessarily make sense. It's just sometimes things jump so quick, or suddenly we're there when we're there, or there's a flashback but there's no indication it's a flashback or something like that. But it's still an enjoyable movie, as I say, not classic by any means at all. Another film with Shaolin in the title that really has nothing little to do with Shaolin. Hope you enjoyed the review. So there's not really a lot much else to say about this movie. It's just worth checking out for something different. I would say it's probably better than Shaolin Kung Fu. As I say, with Shaolin Kids, the fights are a lot more graceful. They're a lot more sophisticated, and it is quite enjoyable. So you get Carter Wong here in a nice little supporting role, and Polly as well doing her thing. And it's an okay kung fu movie. Put it that way. It's a more than okay kung fu movie. So thank you very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you again soon.